Good morning.
Good morning.
Yesterday, Madam President, the House of Representatives passed a joint resolution that will ensure our railroads continue to operate and our economy continues to function as the holiday season commences. Last night, I invoked Rule 14 to place that resolution directly onto the legislative calendar. Senators are working morning, noon, and night to reach an agreement for us to act on this measure ASAP. The Senate cannot leave until we get the job done, and Democrats will keep working with Republicans to find a path forward that everyone can support. One of my top priorities is holding a vote to provide rail workers with the paid sick leave many of them have asked for. I support paid sick leave. My Democratic colleagues support paid sick leave, and we want to see it included in the package. We hope some of our Republican colleagues will join us. Forcing workers to choose between their health and their livelihoods is unacceptable, and for that reason, Democrats, myself included, think it should be included. One thing is certain, Madam President, one thing is certain. Time is of the essence. A rail shutdown is set to begin December 9th, but the truth is we need to resolve this impasse well in advance of that date. Suppliers and businesses across the nation are going to begin shutting down operations soon if they think a strike is imminent. They're not going to wait till December 9th. They're not going to put something on a rail car in Seattle on December 7th that may be stuck in Peoria on December 9th because there's a rail strike, even when it's headed, say, to the East Coast. So the suppliers and businesses, the drop-dead date, if you will, before damage occurs is a lot sooner than December 9th. And there'd be painful disruptions to the economy before December 9th if we didn't act soon. The consequences of inaction would be severe. Unsafe drinking water, unusable gasoline, shuttered power plants, and a crippling shutdown of passenger rail across the country. And those are just a few of the myriad of problems, serious problems, that would occur if there's a rail shutdown. In that scenario, nobody wins, everybody loses. So the responsible thing to do here is to move forward and do everything we can to include paid sick leave. Again, we must keep working until the task is complete. Now, on the Omni and the NDAA. As we approach the end of the year, two of the most important priorities the Senate must focus on are passing a year-long omnibus and approving a bipartisan defense appropriations bill. We have a lot of work left to do on both fronts, but so far, I'm encouraged by the goodwill coming from both sides. While Democrats and Republicans disagree on the details of the omnibus, there is little debate that a CR would be terrible news for our troops and for American security. Yesterday, I attended a classified briefing on the latest developments in the war in Ukraine. Without getting into any of the details disclosed there, it was obvious sitting in the room that much of Ukraine's success is thanks to the emergency military and economic aid provided by the United States. 10 months into this war, there is no question, in my judgment, that helping our Ukrainian friends has been the right thing to do. But the fighting in Eastern Europe is sadly far from over. Putin's human rights atrocities continue. He's a vicious and brutal dictator. News reports come in daily of mass graves, civilian casualties, entire cities, men, women, children, civilians being killed and maimed, and entire cities being reduced to rubble. Yet even now, the brave and strong people of Ukraine have endured and fought back. They know what Russian aggression is. They remember it from the days of the 30s when Stalin sought to starve a huge number of Ukrainians to death. The United States must stay the course, helping our friends in need. It's not just, and by the way, this is not just a matter of standing with Ukraine. It's a matter of American security, because deep down, Putin is nothing more than a violent bully who will endanger our own democracy if his influence is allowed to expand, and he will not stop at Ukraine if he succeeds there. The single worst thing we can do right now is give Putin any signal that we are wavering in our commitment to help Ukraine. That's precisely what a CR would signal, and we cannot afford to go down that treacherous road. So I hope both sides will work together. We're making good progress. Paper is now being exchanged back and forth. We're not there yet. We got a ways to go. But we got to keep working till we get an omnibus done for the sake of our national security. Meanwhile, at the same time, both parties must cooperate on passing a bipartisan National Defense Act, as we've done now for more than 6 decades. Just as we need to hold the line against Putin and his belligerents, we also have to stand firm against encroachments and aggression from the Chinese Communist Party. A few months ago, the Senate took a major step in that direction by passing the Chips and Science Act, which will boost domestic chip manufacturing and help sever our dependence on foreign-made semiconductors. But just because we pass Chips and Science doesn't mean the job is done. We need to build our accomplishments by adding even more protections in the NDAA so we can continue reducing U.S. reliance on risky, Chinese-made microchips. So last month, I joined with Senator Cornyn, my colleague from Texas, and to introduce an amendment to the NDAA that would prohibit the U.S. government from doing business with companies that rely on certain Chinese chip makers that the Pentagon has labeled Chinese military contractors. This amendment would address a very big problem. Too many American companies with federal contracts are purchasing chips made by Chinese makers with well-known ties to the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese government. You don't need to be a national security expert to see how this dependence on Chinese chips presents a serious risk to American cybersecurity, to our privacy, to our defense. The previous administration, one of the few areas they went forward on that I agreed with, got rid of Huawei because it gave the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party too much influence. Well, the same thing will happen with these chip makers, these Chinese military contractor chip makers, if they're allowed to infuse their chips, continue to infuse their chips in our own equipment. Now, our amendment would remedy this with a simple proposition. If American businesses want to do business with the federal government, they shouldn't be allowed to turn around and then do business with risky Chinese chip makers. We certainly need and give ample time for American companies to adjust and get American-made chips or non-Chinese-made chips, non-Chinese military contractor-made chips, but it must be done. This is national security once again, as well as economic security, and the idea of keeping America #1, which we took a big step forward on the CHIPS Act, but there's more that has to be done. So, this proposal is one of many sound proposals that I hope to see included in the NDAA. I am, of course, fighting for a whole bunch of other things. On this issue, I thank Senator Cornyn for working with me on the amendment, and very soon the Senate hopefully will take quick action to send a defense appropriations bill, a defense authorization bill, to the President's desk. I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.